Ladies and gentlemen, let me say something to you that might shake you at first, but if you hold on until the end, it will change your life. Your success starts in your mind. Everything you will ever achieve begins not with your circumstances, not with your education, not even with your connections, but with your ability to think rightly about yourself. You are not a random accident in the universe. You were designed with intention, created with precision, and placed here with purpose. And because of that, the first thing you must do is recognize that you are the beginning of your own breakthrough. So many people are walking around defeated, not because life beat them, but because their thoughts did. The battle was lost in the mind long before it ever showed up in their finances, relationships, or health. When you don't think about yourself, when you don't give yourself space to reflect, to envision, to declare who you are and where you're going, then what happens is you start defaulting to whatever the world hands you. And let me tell you something, the world will always hand you less than what God intended. Thinking about yourself means understanding your internal value, the kind of value that isn't determined by likes, followers, bank balances, or praise. It's the deep truth that you are the seed of your own success. Think about a seed. It's small. It's overlooked. People walk past it every day and see nothing. But the seed knows something nobody else does. What's inside of it? Potential, life, multiplication. The oak tree is already in the acorn, the apple orchard already in the seed. The same is true of you. That means every great thing that will ever come out of your life is already sitting inside you. But here's the kicker. It won't grow until you start paying attention to it. And this is where so many people fail. They spend their entire lives tending to other people's fields, watering other people's dreams, and cheering on other people's growth, while their own potential lies dormant. That's not humility, that's neglect. You cannot afford to live a life where everyone else gets your energy and you get your leftovers. You are the first investment you must make. Your mindset is the first currency. Before you invest in stock markets or real estate, invest in your beliefs. What do you believe about your worth, your capability, your calling? If those beliefs are off, everything else you build will be off. Your relationships will suffer because you won't believe you deserve healthy ones. Your income will stay capped because you won't believe you can create more. Your voice will stay silent because you don't think what you have to say matters. But when you begin to truly think about yourself, not in a vain way, not in an egotistical way, but in a way that reflects purpose, everything begins to shift. When a farmer plants a seed, he doesn't walk away and forget about it. He waters it, protects it, checks on it daily. He knows there's life under that dirt, even if he can't see it yet. That's how you have to treat your own potential. Just because it's not obvious doesn't mean it's not powerful. You have to water your mind with truth. Protect your time like it's your harvest, and speak to your own soul like something great is already growing. Because it is. People love to talk about success as if it just happens, as if some people just get lucky. But the truth is, success is attracted to the person who has already decided in their mind that they are worthy of it. Success doesn't show up until you do, and that showing up begins in your thoughts. You must start thinking like the person you want to become. If you want to be a leader, start thinking like one. If you want to be financially free, start thinking like a person who values wealth and stewardship. If you want to be healthy, whole, joyful, peaceful, think about yourself in that state before you get there. Because here's the secret. The mind arrives before the body ever does. Your life will always rise or fall based on the level of your thinking. And your thinking will only rise when you prioritize your own inner life. You have to think about yourself like you matter, like your dream matters, like your voice matters, because it does. If you don't, you'll end up letting other people's opinions build your reality, and that's a dangerous way to live. People will try to define you. It's one of the most predictable things about human nature. People love to put others in boxes they can understand. Not because they're trying to hurt you, but because they don't have the capacity to carry your vision. When people see you, they don't see your full potential. They see your history, your mistakes, your background, your limitations. They see what you were, not what you're becoming. And if you're not careful, you'll start seeing yourself the same way. If you don't think about yourself intentionally, deeply, and consistently, you will begin to absorb other people's limitations like their truth. The truth is, most people are uncomfortable with change, especially in others. When you grow, it disrupts the expectations they had of you. So they'll tell you to stay in your lane. They'll remind you of the times you failed. They'll highlight your weaknesses. Not because you aren't capable, but because your rise makes them question their own comfort. And if you aren't thinking about who you truly are and who you're becoming, you'll fall for it. There's nothing more dangerous than living your life based on someone else's opinion of your value. Think about that for a second. You were created uniquely. Your gifts are not like theirs. Your story, your calling, your wiring, your design, it's all one of a kind. But instead of owning that, most people shrink to fit in with what others expect. They play roles that are too small. They wear labels that never belong to them. They pursue paths that others chose, all while abandoning the blueprint God wrote on their heart. When you don't prioritize thinking about yourself, your future gets hijacked. You start adapting to environments that were never built to hold your destiny. You'll take jobs that pay the bills but kill your passion. You'll stay in relationships that validate your fear but never nurture your soul. You'll start to value things that look good on the outside but cost you peace on the inside. And all of that starts because you didn't guard your self-perception. People will settle you in places you were never meant to live. They'll convince you that average is acceptable. They'll call you unrealistic for dreaming big. They'll call you selfish for focusing on your growth. But let me tell you something. You are not called to fit in. You are called to break patterns. You are not called to remain in the status quo. You are called to shift atmospheres. And you can't do that if you keep playing small to make others comfortable. Thinking about yourself always means maintaining awareness of who you are outside of other people's definitions. It means separating your identity from your history, your calling from their expectations, and your purpose from their opinions. It's not rebellion, it's responsibility. Because if you don't claim your life, someone else will assign it. And their version of your life will never be big enough for the fire burning inside of you. There will be times when your growth offends people who were comfortable with your old self. That's okay. Their discomfort is not your job to manage. Your job is to keep becoming. Your job is to honor the evolution inside of you. Your job is to think about yourself in terms of what God placed in you, not what people try to place on you. The names they call you, the boxes they put you in, the ceilings they try to hang over you, none of it matters if you don't accept it. You've got to ask yourself daily, am I living based on vision or validation? Am I shaping my life based on who I'm called to be or who they think I should be? Am I honoring the truth I carry, or am I shrinking to stay agreeable? Because every day you don't think about yourself as another day, you let someone else define what your life becomes. And that's how legacies die, not in loud failures, but in quiet conformity. Thinking about yourself isn't arrogance. It's alignment. It's returning to the center of who you were designed to be. It's standing in your God-given identity and refusing to be manipulated by the fear, the doubt, or the insecurity of people who never had the courage to rise. You have to remember that elevation is lonely sometimes. People will try to settle you where you don't belong, not because they hate you, but because they don't understand your assignment. But their misunderstanding does not reduce your calling. Your purpose doesn't just happen. It doesn't fall out of the sky. It doesn't show up wrapped in a box with your name on it. Purpose reveals itself when you prioritize it, when you make space for it, when you pursue it with intention. Too many people are waiting for a sign, waiting for confirmation, waiting for life to slow down long enough for purpose to knock on their door. But purpose doesn't work like that. Purpose responds to pursuit. It manifests when you make it a priority in your thinking, your decisions, and your daily actions. You can't fulfill a purpose you don't respect. You can't step into a calling you keep treating like an option. That thing inside of you, that pull, that desire, that unshakable sense that your life is meant for more, is not going to get louder just because you're busy. In fact, it often gets quieter. It gets buried under your distractions, your responsibilities, and your excuses. That's why you have to intentionally choose to elevate it. You have to choose to make your purpose non-negotiable. Because when you don't prioritize purpose, you end up spending your life serving someone else's. It's easy to confuse being productive with being purposeful. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're in alignment. You can be accomplishing goals, checking off tasks, collecting achievements, and still feel empty inside because none of it connects to the reason you're here. And that's the danger of not thinking about yourself. When you don't create space to evaluate what matters most to you, you'll end up building a life that looks good on the outside, but doesn't fulfill you on the inside. You'll become successful at the wrong thing. Purpose requires clarity, and clarity requires focus. It's not something you stumble into by accident. You have to remove the noise. You have to ask yourself hard questions. You have to get brutally honest about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and whether it's truly moving you toward what you were designed to become. That takes courage. It takes self-awareness. It takes the willingness to say no to things that everyone else says yes to simply because they don't align with your assignment. People often think that thinking about themselves means taking a break, indulging, relaxing. But thinking about yourself in the context of purpose means doing the soul work to make sure your life is built on truth. It means asking if your calendar reflects your calling. It means asking if your habits are feeding your future. It means asking if your relationships are pushing you forward or pulling you backward. Purpose doesn't show up in convenience. It shows up in consistency. And consistency comes from clarity of thought and clarity of focus. You don't find purpose in chaos. You find it in alignment. And alignment only happens when your internal compass gets stronger than the external noise. That only happens when you start treating your purpose like it matters more than other people's opinions. That only happens when you start thinking about your purpose every day, not just on weekends, not just at the beginning of the year, not just when life falls apart, but every single day with intentionality. What you don't prioritize, you forfeit. What you don't make room for eventually gets replaced. You have to stop acting like your purpose is optional. It's not something you'll get around to someday when life slows down. Purpose is the reason you breathe. Purpose is the why behind your existence. And when you don't prioritize it, you drift. You get pulled into distractions. You say yes to things you should have rejected. You give your energy to causes and conversations that don't build you. You tolerate environments that shrink you. And all of that comes at the cost of your destiny. Not because you weren't capable, but because you didn't focus. You're not responsible for everything, but you are responsible for your calling. Nobody else can do that for you. You have to protect it, develop it, refine it, and walk in it. The world will always be full of opportunities to veer off course. That's why purpose requires priority. It requires you to make it the center of your decisions. It requires you to filter your choices through the lens of your assignment. Not everything that's good is good for you. Not every open door is your door. When you prioritize purpose, you stop chasing everything and start building what's meant for you. Making purpose a priority doesn't mean you'll always have clarity. It means you'll always have direction. It means you're living on purpose even when the plan isn't perfect. That's the power of thinking about yourself, not just as someone who has goals, but as someone who carries a mission. Someone who has a responsibility to become what they were created to be. Because when you think that way, you stop wasting time. You stop entertaining things that don't matter. You begin to live with focus, with fire, and with full awareness that your time on this earth is limited and your calling is too important to delay. You cannot pour from an empty vessel. This principle is as real in your personal life as it is in your professional, relational, and spiritual life. So many people are running on fumes, trying to give their best to everyone else while giving nothing to themselves. They're showing up for others while slowly disappearing from themselves. They're trying to lead while feeling lost. They're trying to inspire while feeling exhausted. And the world keeps cheering them on for their productivity, not realizing they are slowly burning out behind the performance. There is a cultural obsession with being selfless, with always putting others first, with being the one who sacrifices the most. But let's get one thing clear: self-neglect is not noble. Self-neglect is not humility. It's not leadership. It's not love. Self-neglect is slow self-destruction. You cannot serve people well if you are emotionally, spiritually, and physically bankrupt. And yet, the people who give the most are often the ones who invest in themselves the least. It's not because they don't care. It's because they've been taught that caring for themselves is selfish, that rest is weakness, that boundaries are rude, and that needing time to refuel is some kind of flaw. There is nothing wrong with giving. There is nothing wrong with serving. But there is something deeply wrong when your output exceeds your input for too long. That's when resentment grows. That's when fatigue becomes depression. That's when physical tiredness becomes chronic illness. That's when the person you were born to be gets buried under the person everyone else expects you to be. And all of it happens slowly, silently, until one day you wake up and wonder where your energy went, where your fire went, where your joy went. Thinking about yourself always means paying attention to your own soul. It means treating your energy like it matters. It means saying no without guilt. It means resting without apology. It means filling your cup without waiting for permission. Because here's the truth: when you are full, you give better. When your mind is clear, your decisions improve. When your body is cared for, your performance increases. When your heart is whole, your relationships flourish. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. It's strategic. It's stewardship. You've been entrusted with a life, with gifts, with purpose, and that means it is your responsibility to protect the vessel that carries all of it. You are not a machine. You are not a robot. You are not a resource to be endlessly extracted. You are a living, breathing, dynamic being with needs, limits, and rhythms. Ignoring that doesn't make you strong. It makes you unsustainable. And anything that's unsustainable will eventually collapse, no matter how impressive it looks on the outside. You don't have to wait until you're completely broken to begin healing. You don't have to hit rock bottom before you learn to honor your own needs. You don't have to reach exhaustion before you understand the value of restoration. There is power in pausing. There is wisdom in retreating. There is courage in admitting that you need time, space, nourishment, renewal. You are not a failure because you're tired. You're not weak because you need rest. You're human. And being human means you must treat your inner world with the same care you give your outer world. Thinking about yourself always means tuning in to your emotional state, being honest about your capacity, and making decisions that align with long-term health rather than short-term applause. The applause of others is not worth the erosion of your peace. The approval of the crowd is not worth the betrayal of your inner self. Every time you ignore what your body is telling you, what your spirit is whispering to you, what your heart is longing for, you are not just delaying care, you are deepening damage. And the longer you ignore the signs, the louder they'll become. Fatigue will turn into burnout. Irritability will turn into breakdown. Disconnection will turn into depression. That's the cost of constantly pouring out without ever pouring in. Thinking about yourself in this way is not a retreat from responsibility. It's a return to balance. It's recognizing that the best gift you can give the world is a whole, healthy, centered version of you. People around you don't need your burnout. They don't need your martyrdom. They need your clarity, your joy, your strength, your presence. And all of that comes from overflow, not exhaustion. So you have to monitor the level in your cup. You have to pay attention to your energy. You have to take inventory of your soul. Because what you don't manage will eventually manage you. There comes a point in life when you have to stop negotiating with your worth. Not because you've achieved everything, not because life has become perfect, but because you finally understand that your value is not up for discussion. Too many people spend years waiting for others to validate them before they give themselves permission to rise. They wait for applause before they move forward. They wait for someone to believe in them before they believe in themselves. And in that waiting, they delay their own destiny. They suppress their own power. They silence their own voice. And all of it because they've outsourced the responsibility of self-belief to people who were never qualified to carry it. Thinking about yourself always means you stop living from a place of emotional debt. It means you stop begging for the kind of support you can give yourself. It means you stop chasing affirmation from people who can't even see you clearly. Not because you don't need community, not because you're above advice, but because you finally recognize that if your foundation is built on the opinion of others, your whole life becomes fragile. You're only as secure as their compliments. You're only as confident as their approval. That's not strength. That's dependence disguised as ambition. The real shift happens when you decide that who you are is enough. Not enough someday. Not enough once you reach the goal. Not enough after the transformation. Enough now. In the process. In the mess. In the middle of becoming. That's where confidence is built. That's where identity is forged. That's where you learn that your value was never tied to your performance, your income, your status, or your reputation. You are valuable because you exist, because you carry purpose, because you were created with intentionality. The world will try to convince you otherwise. It will give you 1,000 metrics to measure your worth, your looks, your followers, your resume, your achievements. And if you're not rooted, you'll start living your life to meet those metrics instead of fulfilling your mission. You'll adjust your personality to fit in. You'll filter your truth to stay likable. You'll water yourself down to avoid making waves. And slowly, without even noticing it, you'll become a version of yourself that's more palatable to others, but less powerful to you. When you think about yourself from a place of wholeness, you no longer allow other people's opinions to become your limitations. You start moving based on vision, not validation. You stop asking for permission to shine. You stop apologizing for your growth. You stop waiting for someone to give you a seat at the table and start building your own table. That's not ego. That's ownership. That's what it looks like when you take responsibility for your own development. You don't owe the world your perfection. You owe it your authenticity. You owe it your truth. You owe it the fully expressed version of yourself that isn't hiding behind fear or shame or self-doubt. That's the version of you that's magnetic. That's the version of you that changes rooms, that shifts atmospheres, that inspires people to remember who they are too. But you can't access that version by playing small. You can't embody that version by living from insecurity. You have to rise to meet it. You have to claim it every single day, even when you don't feel like it, even when no one else sees it. This is not about being delusional. This is about being aligned. When you know who you are, you stop being shaken by rejection. You stop crumbling under criticism. You stop fearing failure. You start seeing every setback as a setup, every loss as a lesson, every delay as a divine recalibration. That's the mindset of someone who thinks about themselves with clarity and conviction. That's the mindset of someone who refuses to live below their potential just to make others feel comfortable. You're not doing anyone a favor by minimizing your power. You're not protecting relationships by silencing your truth. You're not honoring your past by staying stuck in patterns that no longer serve you. You were created to evolve, to expand, to elevate. And every time you embrace that evolution, you give other people permission to do the same. You become a mirror, a reminder, a signal that it's possible to grow without guilt. But that only happens when you commit to seeing yourself clearly, speaking to yourself kindly, and showing up for yourself daily. Self-worth is not a destination. It's a daily decision. It's the choice to believe in your own enoughness, even when circumstances try to convince you otherwise. It's the choice to take up space without shrinking, to speak your truth without hesitation, to stand in your calling without compromise. It's the choice to build a life that reflects your value instead of a life that begs for validation. There's a reason why some people move with clarity while others constantly second, guess every decision. Why some walk into a room and shift the atmosphere while others shrink into the background. It's not luck. It's not magic. It's not even that they're better, smarter, or more qualified. It's that they've done the work to know who they are. They've made a commitment to themselves that no matter what happens, they will show up fully, honestly, and unapologetically. That kind of confidence doesn't come from applause or achievement. It comes from reflection, from taking time to think about yourself intentionally, consistently, and courageously. When you learn to prioritize your own inner clarity, you stop being swayed by external noise. You stop living your life in response to pressure and start living it in alignment with purpose. Most people are reactive. They wait for life to tell them who they are. They wait for people to affirm their gifts. They wait for circumstances to give them direction. But when you think about yourself on purpose, you become proactive. You decide what matters to you. You determine how you show up. You define the rules of engagement for your own life. And this is not about becoming self-absorbed. It's about becoming self-aware. Because without self-awareness, you're just a puppet pulled by the strings of expectation, emotion, and external validation. You move through life following scripts you didn't write and chasing goals you don't even care about. You climb ladders only to realize they're leaning against the wrong walls. Thinking about yourself always is not indulgence. It's insight. It's looking beneath the surface to understand what drives you, what heals you, what triggers you, and what stretches you. It's asking the hard questions. Who am I without the titles? Who am I without the pressure to perform? Who am I when no one is watching? The truth is, most people never stop long enough to ask these questions. They're too busy being busy, too consumed with productivity to consider purpose. But the speed at which you move doesn't matter if you're headed in the wrong direction. You could be running full speed toward a life that doesn't even align with who you truly are. That's why thinking about yourself is not a one-time event. It's a lifestyle. It's a discipline. It's the regular practice of checking in with your soul to make sure you're not just surviving, but actually living. You have to know what peace feels like to protect it. You have to know what alignment feels like to recognize when you're off track. You have to know what truth feels like so you're not deceived by comfort or consensus. That kind of knowing only comes from self-investment, not just the kind you post about, but the kind you live daily. The quiet decisions to slow down, to reflect, to listen, to journal, to sit with yourself and not be afraid of what rises to the surface. Because everything in your life flows from your internal state. Your leadership, your relationships, your creativity, your energy, all of it is either enhanced or hindered by your inner world. If you're constantly running on empty emotionally, spiritually, mentally, it will show up in how you lead and how you love. But when you are full, when you are clear, when you are centered, you make different decisions. You attract different outcomes. You shift from striving to flowing, from performing to being, from fear to faith. Thinking about yourself always means you give yourself permission to evolve. You stop forcing yourself to fit into outdated definitions of who you used to be. You stop apologizing for wanting more, for outgrowing old circles, for dreaming new dreams. Because once you start thinking about yourself at a deep level, you realize that comfort can't compete with calling. That safety isn't the same as fulfillment. That staying the same just to be accepted is a slow form of self-betrayal. You have to be willing to choose yourself in rooms that want you to stay silent. You have to be bold enough to advocate for your needs, even when it makes others uncomfortable. You have to be clear enough about your value that rejection doesn't derail you and delay doesn't define you. And that level of clarity only comes from doing the deep work. Thinking, reflecting, observing, healing. Not just once, but over and over again. This is not about reaching a perfect version of yourself. It's about being in honest relationship with yourself. about knowing your strengths and owning your flaws, about accepting your journey while still stretching for growth, about being able to hear your own voice above the noise. And when that happens, when your inner world is aligned, the external world starts to bend to that clarity. Not because it's easier, but because you've stopped being divided within yourself.